The central theme is very important. It is the theme that guides the viewer through the story. When it comes to Deadman Wonderland, the central theme appears to me to be tragedy, and the question that is asked is, how do we deal with tragedy? So let's look at some examples, starting with Ganta. Throughout the story, when Ganta is confronted with tragedy, he expresses the wish to forget it. He wants to repress the memory and pretend like the tragedy didn't even happen. The greatest example of this, of course, is repression of his memory of Shiro, but there are also other times in the series, such as when he is finally released from prison, that he wants to forget everything that has happened to him. I also don't think that is a coincidence that the bad guys try to take control of Ganta's mind and erase his will and memories. I think that it is a nod from the author to confirm what Ganta has been doing and what he has continually been doing in the story when he is faced with harsh cruelties. By the end of the story, however, Ganta chooses not to repress his memories anymore, and he instead decides that he'll live with them along with Shiro. The next example that we'll look at is Senji. Senji, in many ways, is a mirror to Ganta. When they first meet, Ganta is a kid while Senji is an adult. Ganta is inexperienced in fighting, while Senji is a pro. Ganta is afraid to face the cruelties of reality, while Senji is not, and while Ganta repressed his memories, Senji didn't. In fact, in memory to the police officers that gave their lives to protect him when he was just a rookie, Senji had the letters DSMK tattooed above his right eye. DSMK, by the way, are the first letters of the names of the fellow policemen that saved him. Senji is the opposite to Ganta in the aspect of forgetting the memory of a tragedy. However, Senji is also the opposite to Ganta in respect to another aspect. Despite his flaws, Ganta is still hopeful for the future, but Senji is not, at least before he met Ganta. Senji really didn't care about other people. His only interest with our boy here was to see if he was a worthy challenge in a fight. Senji may have not forgotten the tragedies that he has seen, but he has allowed them to forgo any sight of hope. Ganta changes that. I also want to mention that when Senji had both his eyes, he only wanted to fight, but only after losing one of them, he begins to see from Ganta the hope that he thought had disappeared. This makes me think of the all-seeing Egyptian god Horus that has only his right eye, but in this case Senji has only his left eye. Also, Senji losing his arm and his refusal to use his branch ascend anymore branches Ganta's refusal to fight Shiro. Rather than fight or use his bloodbending, Senji favors a different path, and that path, as displayed here with him rock climbing with this other guy, appears to be one more peaceful and willing to forge new friendships. The next example that we'll look at is Minazuki. Minazuki's tragedy was the abandonment of her mother after the earthquake. From her point of view, the tragedy of her mother abandoning her made her believe that no one can be trusted. I think that's why she decided to lie about her father abusing her and sexually assaulting her. She no longer believed that her parents, or anybody really, could truly be trusted or loved. That's why she puts on this lovey-dovey act for Ganta before their fight, so that way she can have an advantage, and that's also why she acts so twisted and repulsive. It's hard for someone to love you if they're repulsed by you. However, she does have someone that does love her, that being her brother. So the mirror to Minazuki's belief that love is a lie is actually her brother, Yu. And in the story, it appears that Yu has a serious sister complex, and on the most part, I think that's true. Yu was willing to backstab everyone around him just so that he could get enough cash to save his sister, and during Minazuki's fight with Ganta, he reveals that he knows about his sister's true and twisted nature, but he's still going to take care of her. The next example that we'll look at is Itaru. So several times during the story, Itaru displays himself as intelligent, having a cool head, and having a stoic attitude. But despite that, his mind responds in ways that are out of his control. After the death of his wife, for example, he can no longer fall asleep. And after the death of his daughter, he could still hear her voice talking to him. So Itaru represents the fact that you can be extremely intelligent and think that you have a firm grasp on your mind, but your mind can still react in ways that you don't want them to. In Hitaru's case, it was hearing voices and being able to fall asleep. There are many other examples in the story, but I'm going to end this section with the example of Shiro. So Shiro in many ways is a combination of those different responses to tragedy that I have spoken previously. We have the mind doing things against, you could say, conscious will, with the creation of a split personality. We have the repression / separation of memories, again with a split personality. We have the foregoing of hope in favor of death, and we also have the belief that love is a lie. Shiro saw Ganta leave her as a child, her only friend, but despite that, she infused the branch of sin into his chest so that someday she could be killed by the guy she loved. She did not believe that they could love each other in their reality, in life, so she chose to have love in death. At the end of the story, all those things are resolved. We have the two personalities now become one. There's no longer a separation/repression of memories. And we also have Shiro being hopeful that it is possible that both she and Ganta can live together and love each other in reality. So to round back, I think that the central theme of the story is tragedy, and the question that is being asked is, how do we deal with tragedy? I think that the answer the story gives is that hope is still out there. From your point of view, it may not seem like it, but it is. It's still out there. Alright, so now that I've finished talking about the central theme, I can now talk about my differing opinions about the ending. So stemming from the fact that the central theme is a tragedy, and based off what I know about tragedies, the epilogue of this story scares me. Tragedies do not have happy endings. So when this story is telling me that things ended up okay and we got ourselves a happy ending, it shouldn't be a surprise that I'm not quick to jump on that boat. I don't know. There could be a lot of holes in that boat. Let me present to the court example number 1, the tragedy of Oedipus. The royal parents of Oedipus were told a prophecy that one day that their own child would kill their own father. In order to prevent that prophecy from becoming true, they sent their child away, and that child was then raised by another royal family. That child grew up, and one day, that child, being Oedipus, learned of a prophecy that one day that he will kill his parents and then marry his mother. In order to prevent that prophecy from becoming true, he left his family and went to Thebes. On the road to Thebes, he then met his biological father, Laios, and killed him in a quarrel. He then traveled to Thebes, solved the Sphinx's riddle, and then he was then awarded the hand of the queen, that being his mother. For a time, he must have been super stoked and happy, until he learned of the truth. Let me present to the court example number 2, Antigone. After the events of Oedipus, Oedipus' sons fight each other for their father's throne, and in the process, they end up killing each other. This then results in the crowning of Creon, Oedipus' brother-in-law. In response to Oedipus' son's deaths, Creon orders for only one of the sons to be buried, while the other is not. This then angers Antigone, his niece and Oedipus' daughter, who then illegally decides to bury her other brother. Creon catches wind of this, and he then orders his niece to death. However, his son was also engaged to Antigone, and he's really pissed off that he's done this. In order to please his son, he decides that he won't just kill his niece. He'll just put her in a cave where she'll starve to death. But then after doing this, Creon learns that the gods do not approve of what he's done, so he quickly buries the other brother and attempts to free Antigone. But alas, it's too late. Antigone has hanged herself. In response to the death of Antigone, Creon's own son then commits suicide as well. And in response to her son being lost, Creon's wife, Eurydice, then commits suicide as well. Are you still not convinced? Alright, I didn't want to do this, but I have to bring out my boy Shakespeare. Let me present to the court exhibits number 3, Titus Andronicus, the story of a Roman general being betrayed and having his children both disfigured and killed. Does any man with breath still within their alveoli dare to speak of the ending of Titus Andronicus of the meat pie as anything of a happy ending? And now if you are still not convinced, please do not make me bring up my boy Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, or my boy and gal Romeo and Juliet. Tragedies do not have happy endings. So when I'm reading a story that appears to have an ending that looks like the up and up, I'm worried. It is because of this worry that I have decided that I need to take a closer look. So let's recall Ganta and Shiro's epilogue from the ending. Ganta is leading a normal life, Shiro is in a coma in a hospital, and after Ganta leaves her room and starts walking in the street, she wakes up. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at these events. After Ganta talks with Shiro, we get a flashback to what I think is Shiro asking if the woodpecker was happy at the end of the song. During the story, Ganta is given the name woodpecker. However, later on, Shiro associates the woodpecker, the animal poking trees and killing his friends, with herself. We next see feathers dropping from a bird, symbolizing hope, Ganta grasping that hope, Shiro opening her eyes, and then Ganta saying from the flashback, "Hey Shiro, will you listen to how the song goes on?" And then after that we see a feather, the representation of hope, alongside some pieces of a feather representing damage on the last page. So the story appears to be saying that yes, Ganta and Shiro get a happy ending, but how that manifests, we don't really know. To me, it looks like Ganta and Shiro are going to be together through whatever happens next, and what happens next might not be something good. Although both Shiro's and Ganta's branches of sin have been destroyed, can it grow back? I mean, Shiro's body has shown to be able to regenerate through the most dangerous and life-threatening injuries ever, and the same thing goes for Ganta. I mean, he may not have that regeneration ability like Shiro, but that thing was connected to him for a long time. There's no telling whether that thing, which came from Shiro by the way, could grow back as well. So besides the possibility of the branches of sin growing back, we don't know what effects will happen to both Ganta and Shiro's body in response to using the branch of sin for so long. In the story, it has been shown that Ganta's branch of sin was consuming his body, and continuing to use it could result in his death. Despite this, Ganta still went on to use his powers. There is no telling what has happened to his body or what will happen to his body in the future. And with Shiro, yeah, she may not have her branch of sin anymore, but what if that was the only thing keeping her body together? Part of the reason that Shiro has all these scars across her body is that she was heavily experimented on as a child, and this even includes the removal of vital organs. Yeah, she was able to regenerate them, but as seen with the scars on her body, her vital organs might be heavily scarred as well. Scarred vital organs in a normal person can have decreased organ functionality and tissue perfusion. Perhaps because she's had her great healing ability thanks to the branch of sin, those problems have been able to be ignored, but now that it's gone now, there's no telling what effects will happen to her body now that she can't quickly regenerate herself. So, in conclusion, my thoughts are that despite what the golden rule is telling me that tragedies do not have happy endings, it appears that Ganta and Shiro do get to have somewhat of a happy ending. But in regards to how that's going to manifest, again, because both Ganta and Shiro have been using the branches of sin for so long, and Shiro doesn't have a healing ability anymore, there's no telling what will happen to their bodies. They might have some serious medical issues. Alright, so now that I finished talking about the ending, it's now time to give my final thoughts. Deadman Wonderland is not a series for everyone. It has a much darker tone than the traditional manga, you know, the cool kids, and it also has some serious pacing issues with some things, in my opinion, happening way too fast, while other things just go on and on and on. Despite that though, I still like this story. I think that the story is interesting. I think that the central theme is very strong. I think that all the characters are well thought out. And I also think that the romance between Ganta and Shiro is incredible. It's incredible to watch it evolve and change over time. And it's also incredible to watch it sputter as new revelations are revealed. I do recommend this story to manga and anime fans, but I also have a warning. There are a lot of bad things that happen in this story. A lot of things that I didn't even include in this video. So be aware of that if you decide to read this. Read at your own discretion. So with that ends my retrospective of the manga called Deadman Wonderland. If you like this video, why not show it by clicking that like button? And also, you might like my other videos. I have another manga retrospective already made on Rosario Vampire. I actually have a video only on BitChute that's a comic video on Spider-Man 2099 issue number 1 from the 90s. And I also do video game reviews as well. So if you like this video, you might like those stuff too. So besides that, thank you for watching this video. See ya.